uh, report that we can throw up in a couple of minutes as a
Uh,
PDF? I'll make you a co-host. Hold on, let me make you a co-host.
yeah, I don't know if it's pretty large
Don't
file.
worry about it. I know. All you have to do is open it up as a PDF, and then at when we get to that point, you just simply put it up there, and then we can start to look at it.
Okay.
Uh, okay, so let me start. I want to welcome every. Bruce, are you recording now? Okay. I want to welcome everybody to the February 19th edition of the Pacifica Technology Task Force. We're once again going to focus in on the issue of Corporation for Public Broadcasting money issues. We have with us today two people who are going to illuminate some problems that we face. We're going to first start with John Amella. John Amella can introduce himself. He's along with Otis McClay, and John will correct me on this, he's among the compliance officers that were designated several years ago to deal with CPB compliance.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have Dan McCrory come and throw up on the screen a community needs assessment that they did out in California for his TV station at KCET. And I don't think it's not gonna be as excruciating as it was to go through the regs the way we did it the last time. But I mean, that was sort of like it reminded me of when I would participate in Bible study groups, critical Bible study groups, to take each book of the Bible and go through it in excruciating detail. We're not going to do that today. Um, but anyway, and I should announce that on the 27th of March, we will have a special guest talking about podcasting. I can't really identify. Well, I could. We're recording this. I can't really identify her because of the nature of how I got her to speak. But trust me, she's from one of the podcasts in the United States. It's one of the most. It's one of the top five podcasts in the United States, and in terms of it being heard. And she also teaches audio sound reporting at one of the more prestigious journalism schools here in New York City. So she's going to join us on the 27th. Um, and anyway, so let me get started. So first of all, let me welcome everybody. And we have Darlene here from KPFA, Beth, John Amella. First, John, introduce yourself. And John has to split in about a half hour, so John's going to lead off first. So John, do your thing, man.
Hi, I'm John Almella. I'm the Director of Engineering and Compliance for Pacifica. So I handle FCC compliance and half of the CPB compliance. Otis handles some of the things that have to do with posting governance and meeting announcements. And in the past, I was handling for CPB the reports that we had to submit every year with each station had to report. There were two reports. There were the station activity surveys known as SASs, and there were some financial reports. So I'm just going to kind of give you a brief outline of what those were, because chances are this will be part of the application process. Um, so anyway, we had, I think they were due in February, and we were able to have two 1 week extensions, something like that, or two 2 week extensions to submit them. And we were pretty good with the station activity surveys, and the financial reports we couldn't submit because we didn't have um, audits. So we couldn't finish the process. So I'm going to go over that a little bit and give you an idea of what were in these reports. So the SASs had, like they had a number of different categories. First one was grantee information, and that would be basically the diversity of employees at the different units. So you would have different categories and you would have to plug in numbers. It was all kind of data entry stuff. And the general managers typically filled out these reports, and I would look at them and just make sure that they did them and that they were submitted on time. So, so the first part of the general information would be employment of full-time radio employees. And then the second time would be major programming decision makers. So you would have to show the diversity there, and then employment of part-time radio employees and part-time employees and full-time hiring. There was all this kind of different stuff, and they were looking at the racial makeup and whether they were the gender and whether they were non-minority or minority. So there were all this information that kind of had to be put in. Then it would ask you about hiring contractors and how you communicated with your hiring contractors, you know, the different direct mail, telemarketing, where you were getting your group of contractors from. Then corporate management, and you know, so, and on and on and on. So that was one part of it. I'm trying to get to radio and production. I'm looking through a report right now. Then they had a narrative, and you actually would give information on the diversity of the actual positions. So that was part of the SAS. I'm looking at what else we have. Let me look and see if I have anything else. I pulled up a number of different things, and
Pardon me, John, you can throw it up on the screen if you want.
actually, I'm not on Zoom on
Okay,
on the computer. I think I have a blank one somewhere that I can share if you send me an email. So, so there would also be, I'm trying to look and find, let's see if I have anything else that will be helpful about the SASs. It was basically about diversity and what the station was doing. And so trying to see if I have anything else here. No, obviously I don't have it in front of me. So anyway, so there was, and there would also be the diversity of the governance body, and the governance body would be the national governance body because they are the owners of the foundation. So one of the problems that Pacifica has had in the past was that everybody was putting up what they thought the national board was like, and it would differ from station to station, and all of this was handled in a main account, and that was driving the CPB kind of crazy. So I took over, and I would crunch those numbers and basically put that information into everybody's SAS report. So we were very successful in submitting up till 2020. That was the last year because it would have been in February or March. So we were successful in getting those reports done. Excuse me. The financial reports were more difficult because we didn't have our audits. So we couldn't actually submit these. So, so you would have the grantee profile, the Schedule A, draft revenue, Schedule E, expense and investment capital, Schedule F, reconciliation, audited financial statements. That was the part that they demanded an upload of the audited financial statements. And we never had them after like 2011 or 2012. We were behind, so we couldn't provide the prior year's statement, so we couldn't file this part of the form, even though we were still qualified to be in the CPB program. We were still qualified by them. We were not entitled to receive any money from the grants. That would be that provided in the past about 1.2 million to Pacifica, and was broken up in each station. So so that's about what I have. Does anybody have any questions right now?
All right, before you do that, I did send you an email, so if you could send me that document, maybe I could throw it up. But why don't people raise their hands, and we'll
Yeah.
go through comments and questions from everybody. Go on, Beth.
So what we were getting from other than the community service grant, which was giving us, as I say, around 1.2 at the height of what we were getting. We were also getting our license, our musical copyrighted license paid for by CPB. So those were the PROs, which are the performance rights organizations, which are comprised of ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and GRM. And they provide the composition rights. So that would be the written music and the lyrics for songs that we may want to play on the radio or play on the stream or have in our station archives. So it was only that part. It's not the recorded work. The actual recordings that we play are handled by Sound Exchange. So once we were no longer qualified within CPB, we had to handle that ourselves. Now, Sound Exchange, we could get back into the CPB Sound Exchange agreement by joining the National Federation of Community Broadcasters group and paying a small rider. And then we were back into that CPB Sound Exchange program. So that's something that we had to actually pay for ourselves. The performance rights organizations, there are 4 of them, as I said, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and the little one, which is Global Music Rights, GMR. I think that's correct. We have to pay those fees ourselves because CPB is no longer paying for them at this point till we get back into CPB.
Before Beth comes on, can you answer a question? So where are we at with the ability to play license?
Can you wait a minute? I need to turn you back up because I'm not hearing you, Jim.
How's that better?
That's much better.
All right. Can you give us a status upgrade as to where we're at with this issue of licensed music? What do we owe and not owe? Are we essentially playing licensed music illegally right now?
We're working to get in compliance, and I actually we're mostly in compliance with BMI, and we're working to get in compliance with those other organizations.
All right. I see Beth has a question. Go on, Beth.
Actually, I just wanted to follow up on John's synopsis of our situation with the audits. As a member of the National Financial Committee this past year, we managed to plow through 3 years of audits in a single year's time to catch us up to current. And this year we are on track to get the fiscal 2021 audit done on time. So that should no longer be an issue.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
All right. Can you see what I just put up there, this station activity survey?
Yep.
Because Julie shared that with us. That's not actually the survey. That's, I guess, a login to it. But
that's the login, and unfortunately, our logins don't work anymore.
Okay.
Once we were disqualified, they had they posted something saying the stations are disqualified. And the last time Otis or I tried to log in, we found that we couldn't.
All right. So you don't have an example of this kind of survey we could look at right now.
I will send it to you.
Okay.
I have to find it. I thought
All
I
right.
had it on the screen in front of me, but I can send you the SAS, and hopefully I have a blank financial form also.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
okay.
Julie has a question. Go on, Julie.
Yeah, not so much a question, just pointing out that, Jim, in that Excel spreadsheet that I sent the link to, which frankly, I just got from the CPB site. It's not like I'm an expert here, right? I know how to Google. But it has a bunch of tabs, and the first tab is the login. And then there are later tabs, like one for, the employment. There's just all the things that John described, the average
Right.
salary, information about the governing board. There's a tab for community outreach activities. And so it's not how you would fill out the form, but it is the questions that you would have to fill in if indeed you were on their, online login. Exactly. If you keep going over to other tabs on the spreadsheet.
Huh.
And I'm not a Mac person, so I don't know. I can't.
All
Give
right.
you advice.
I'll try to open it up as we're talking. Anybody else have comments or questions to John? Oh, come on. I know you guys do. Jim, you must have a question.
It really is important
Oh,
to
Bruce,
get.
go on, Bruce. Go on, Bruce.
No, that was John. I was just saying that the PROs, the combined amount that we're going to have to pay is about, it's give or take, probably about $75,000 a year. That's
And
what we. That's what we
explain
are.
explain to them what the PROs are.
The performance rights organizations there are 4 of them. As I said, ASCAP, CSAC, BMI and ASCAP are the 2 big ones. CSAC is about half the size, and GMR is tiny. They each they provide licenses for artists. So they're an artist organization, and then entities that want to play their music or have an artist do a cover of the music. This is all about, this is actually kind of publishing rights, even though we're not publishing. It's the composition of the music and the lyrics rights. And it's what they call a compulsory license, which means anybody can buy a license. The organizations and artists have nothing to say about, I don't want that person to be able to play my music. If you're part of these organizations and you pay, you license it for a year, you can play their music on air, you can stream it, you can have it as a streamed listen after the fact, but it does not give you any. What I wanted to say is it does not give you license to distribute. Those would not be compulsory licenses. Those are not covering licenses. If you're distributing copyrighted material, then you have to do it on a song-by-song basis with the copyright holders. So there's a distinction there.
All right. And here is this is the actual repetition of what he's talking about. Go on, Ken.
Does that give us, if you have those licenses, do you have the right to use it for a lead-in on a podcast or on a show?
Podcasts are different. Podcasts are distribution. No, the PROs and the sound exchange licenses those licenses do not cover distribution, and podcasts are distribution.
Okay,
So
what
you
about in broadcasting? Can you use it for a theme for the show or
Absolutely.
something?
or
So-
streaming, or on the station archives for.
Oh, you
a-
can stream. I could stream "Sympathy for the Devil" by the Stones for
if
free.
if you had both the PRO, that you had a license with the PRO that owns the publishing rights for that particular song or artist, and you have the sound exchange agreement, then yes, you could stream it or you could broadcast it.
But is it easier to just use it as a lead-in, or is the same requirements? You know, the beginning of the show.
I don't understand.
When most people start a show, they usually have a musical background.
Right, it's the same. It's the
It's the
same.
same. Okay.
But if you were not affiliated with a station, it gets more complicated.
Well, I mean, doesn't it apply the same to paid or unpaid broadcasters, volunteer staff? If they're doing a show and they have a lead-in and they want to play whatever song it is.
If you
just
have
as a-
licensing, the licensing would be different for a corporate entity than a non-commercial entity.
Yeah, we're non-commercial. I mean, we're non-profit.
I understand, but
I'm talking about BAI,
the
Pacifica.
point is there's two different licenses. There's the PRO and there's the sound exchange. Sound exchange is for the actual recording, a specific recording that's owned, let's say, by the artist or by a record company. That would be cleared through sound exchange. The composition rights, which are the lyrics and the musical, the written music, that has to be cleared also for broadcast or for streaming. Sound exchange is only for streaming right now.
Well, I'm just trying to get what you have to communicate to the program directors and the broadcasters about what they're allowed to broadcast or not.
They're allowed to broadcast when we're in compliance with the PROs and with the sound exchange. They're allowed to broadcast pretty much any music that they want
Without paying royalties.
without paying any additional royalties. The additional royalties that you'd have to pay are if you're doing distribution, that's downloads, and even if it's within a show, and even if it's 30 seconds or less, you know that's a real issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point. Kenny, just as when I was doing television, we used to have to ask permission to ABC or CBS or NBC if we were going to use a clip. And I used to have to call up their news department, get clearance, and usually fair use, they let you use about 1 or 2 minutes. Usually with music, though, copyrighted music, you can get away with like 10 or 15 seconds of it.
No, you can't. I used to work.
Actually, the person we're going to bring in on the 27th is actually pretty good at talking about that. But anyway,
Okay.
we can reserve on
Well,
that.
that's great.
Okay, I didn't want to just take us down the alley on this. I just wanted to
All right.
know.
Let me bring Dan on. Dan wants to ask a question. Go on, Dan.
Actually, I have a couple of questions. Does this pertain to live music that's being broadcast also?
Live music wouldn't. If we have a right to the live music, if they're actually playing in the studio,
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't. It would fall under the PROs if they do a cover version. A cover version of a song that's written by somebody else that's copyrighted. You'd be able to broadcast it. But you couldn't use it in a podcast if it's somebody else's. Even if the performer says, I'll give you rights to this, you can't. A cover version, it's somebody else's music.
Makes
So
sense.
for distribution, again, it's a separate license that you have to clear per song.
Are these negotiated by the station or by Pacifica or per show?
At this point, The licensing is very difficult. So we don't have a mechanism at this point for distribution of copyrighted music in podcasts or downloads. What we should be doing is for those type of services, we should be using copyright free music, and they're huge archives, like the one at WFMU. They have, I don't know, something like it's in the tens of thousands of songs that you can use, and you don't need to worry about copyright.
Thank you, John.
All right, Bruce. Got to turn yourself up, man.
That came from our broadcast attorneys. That they said I think that's actually in the sound exchange agreement. And we're working on
That was somebody.
If there aren't any more questions, I will leave. And if you have any more questions, we can follow up in a later.
All right.
Later.
I have just one parting question, if I could.
Sure, Ken.
Do you have a document explaining as simply as possible what rights broadcasters have and where they should be cautious? Something you could distribute to somebody with let's say, a public school background, so that it can be distributed to the broadcasters and the program directors.
I have some documents. They're not simple because this is a complicated. It's multifaceted.
Well, if it's going to be more than a page, it's not going to get understood. So who could draw it up? Who could draw up something? Does it have to be a lawyer?
You know what? I could. If we use the lawyers, it's going to be expensive.
Right.
I guess I could work with you on that going ahead, Ken.
Okay.
Like. Okay.
All right. Okay.
What? Why don't you send that to me, and I'll make sure, and send it to Kenny, and we'll make sure everybody gets that, because that's useful to look at.
Okay. Well, it's a work in progress. I've been working on it for a number of years, but it has, everything, including it cites the actual law. So to get it down so that it's just bullet points is going to be a bit of work.
Right. Well, one just before you go, one person we could ask. There's a person who's friendly to Pacifica, who runs the music entertainment program in NYU, and he's actually had people come in from the court in Washington that deals with music copyrights, and things like that. He might be a good resource to tap into to talk about this with us. Anyway, Bruce, do you have a final question to?
Yeah, before you talk about final questions, this is James. I also have a question.
Go on, Jim.
Well, you can let Bruce go. I just wanted to make sure you don't label it final.
Go on, Bruce.
Sure. Well, yeah, the managers were pretty good, and I would say 95% of the reports were received passing grades from the CPB. So I don't think the reports are that much of a problem.
Yeah, Jim. Jim, does anybody else have a question? Maybe we could ask everybody to ask whatever other questions they have, and then John can answer them or comment on them. Does anybody else besides Jim have a comment or question before he cuts out? All right, seeing none, go on, Jim.
Yeah, John, we've been talking about this for some time, but
Sure.
I wanted to drill down on the issue of the cabs. And,
Yep.
We have cabs at some stations. Some of them are in varying degrees of functionality. We're trying to stand up cabs at a couple of stations. And in the regs, it gives the cabs 3 rights having to do with reviewing station policy and how the station is serving the communities that it's supposed to be serving. But it gives the cabs one responsibility or obligation, and that's to conduct a community needs assessment. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
I can't because I wasn't handling that part of compliance. I think Otis might know better than I do about that. But if you want to work on it going forwards, I'm definitely, I'll work with you guys.
Well, may I say a few more things about it then? I think the cabs themselves are supposed to do this. I was just having a conversation with a former executive director this morning about whether or not the stations can assist the cabs in doing that, which I believe at one of our stations, they're saying the station is going to take the lead in that. This former executive director was implying that it had to originate and be done by the cab. But I think some of the cabs are going to have difficulty with that. So I'm hoping we can get the assistance of management and possibly even have it do sort of a double purpose. I don't know to what extent this would fit the legal requirements and whether the research would be similar, but to use it to do some kind of market research to know what people out there want, because audience is one of our big issues. We have to have certain audience levels to even comply with CPB. And, traditionally the revenue follows the audience by a certain lag time.
Yep.
And if we get the audience up, we'll solve some of our revenue problems. So bottom line is I'd like to investigate whether we can use this as kind of a twofer and get some market research out of it at the same time we do the community needs assessment, which we have to do for this for these grants. You get the community service grants, or you get to get the minority audience service station grants. I don't know if we just get membership. I think maybe we can get the music licensing without qualifying for the grants, because they certainly kept us in the music licensing long after they bounced us out of the community service grants. But anyway, those are just some questions or issues that we need to look at.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for.
Well, one last comment from Julie, and then you can go, John. Julie, you have a question here?
Yeah. John, do you know the last year we filed the AFR with the CPB?
I think it was 2011 or 2012. I think that's when we lost the grants. I think that's when I first heard about it.
Okay.
In one of the meetings, the executive director at the time sent out a notice to all the general managers and said, look, we're falling short and we need to do this. And I'm not sure if our AFRs, if it was later that we fell behind or not. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's like 2011, 2012.
Got it. Thanks.
That's audited financial reports for people who might not recognize the alphabet there. Also, I wanted to ask you quickly, John, didn't you tell me in either, I think maybe 2020, or maybe it was you told me in 2020, it was for 2019, that we had continued to fill out the applications, but we just didn't file them because we didn't have the AFRs?
The AFRs we started, I think it was when I got involved, so it might have been 2014 or 2015.
No, I got that part, but didn't we continue to fill out the applications?
We did. We definitely continued to fill out the SASs because
as late as 2020 or 2019.
2020. That's correct.
Yeah.
2020 was the last.
So this is not all brand new. We're not starting fresh with all this.
The AFRs, I'm not sure what year. It might have been 2015. It might have been earlier. I remember once what we did was we actually filled them out, made copies of them, and sent them to the CPB by mail, and they never responded. So
Right.
because
I
we
I,
did,
think it's around the time when Summer was ousted, the whole thing fell apart.
it could be around 2012 or
Yeah.
2013.
All right. Well,
I
thank
gotta
you,
go. I
John.
want to thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
All right. Take care.
All right. Now, and Dan has just put in the chat that he has a friend who works for the agency that deals with rights to music, ASCAP, BMI, etc. here in LA. His name is Dennis Streith. We can talk about that. I'll just, before we bring Dan on, this is the actual SAS survey here that he was talking about. You can get that. Julie, I believe, went to the website. And if you go to the website, put in SAS radio reporting, you're going to get this instruction. And this is the kind of things that John was just talking about. I'm not going to go into detail on this. This is employment. You know, people can go to it and look at it. I've actually seen this done. Bertolt showed me this several times. The general managers, it's a no-brainer to do this. It's pretty easy when they get this set up. But these are the kind of categories of information they want about minority group identification, because that's important, because if you are a minority group station, you actually get a dispensation on the Nielsen rating requirements they have. Persons with disabilities, employment of full-time radio employees. Remember, each station has to have, we're in the top category. We have to have 4 or 5 full-time employees, which we all do, I believe. Employment of part-time, you have to put the FTEs in there. All these kind of categories. I'll try to put this in the chat. Maybe Julie can find. Oh, she's got a PC, so maybe it's a little easier for me to handle. No offense to you PC guys. And here's the salary report. So you have to put all that in. They do the average. You know, this is again. Gets pretty rote when these guys do this every year. I've seen Bertold do this for many years. Job descriptions, etc. Corporate management. You know, you have to list who's the chief executive officer, financial officer, digital media operations. Interesting. We don't have anybody doing that. Promotions. These are usual things in normal radio stations. Communication and PR, production. And this is interesting. We used to have literally 4 people who worked in programming at the station when I first started 30 years ago. Development and fundraising, we don't have development directors. Underwriting and grant solicitation, the big controversial issue. That you have to put in there, broadcast engineering. You have to list all the engineers. The maintenance engineer, in New York it's Jake Glantz. Interesting, the categories: new media directors, webmasters. Then you have to put in the different categories of this kind of person. If there's a public affairs director, if there's an arts director. In New York we used to have one. That's been gone a long time. Chief announcers, reporters. These are the categories they have that obviously come from normal NPR stations. Different events coordinator, you know, there's all these different categories. The governing board. As I remember, Maxie relayed to us that they felt we were overgoverned. Community engagement activities. This was also very important. We actually used to have to fill out forms. When I first started radio, we actually had to fill these out, community engagement activities. I had to write how many hours I was doing on my show. I had to write external things I was doing that did it. So, well, that was actually a requirement back then. I don't know if they still require that now, but obviously they do in some way. Radio programming. Okay, this is, again, you can access this by going up to the CPB and putting this in.
Where does it speak specifically to the community needs assessment?
Yeah, we're gonna do that in a minute. Yeah, exactly. Very good point, Dan. And let's see. Local content and service report, very important. And that's interesting. A local content and services report as a requirement. Interesting. That we didn't have time to get into with John in detail. Perhaps another time. Journalists, who's actually working, news directors, all that. I think the really only functioning station that has this is W and A at this point. This kind of structure. These are the different reporter categories, videographers, video editors. Interesting. All right, well, that's it. So today really we're going to spend time, Dan, we're going to talk about community needs assessments. Dan McCrory is going to throw up on the screen let me throw it over to Dan. You got to unmute.
Got it.
Can you share this? Okay, great.
Okay. I'll give you a little background for those who haven't heard from me yet. I was on the KCT Community Advisory Board. KCT is a local PBS station. It was considered the best station in the West as far as PBS stations. And I was on the Community Advisory Board from 1994 to 2000. And now I've been on it again since 2017. And I'm termed out in 2023. During the 1994 to 2000 era, I was the chair of it from 1996 to 2000. And we had been somewhat of an activist board prior to me becoming chair, and it just exploded once I got on there because I saw ways that we could be more involved with the station and do more to help the station assess their requirements and things like that. But I've never seen in any CPB notes anything about a community assessment, and but I think it's a great idea, and I've actually got one from KPFT to show you also. But what I determined was that we needed something like that, and so I came up with this, I guess you'd call it a business report. And let me show you some of the things that we came up with. As you can see, it's a little old, but here's our focus areas: station manager responsiveness, board of directors, station content. And each one of those has a recommended action step: marketing strategies, new business development, and then some lovely graphs. But this tells you, there's our annual statement, and it talks about what our duties were and how we determined that we could help the station the best. And that's by focusing on these different things and making sure that we hit all our marks on our responsibility to the station and to the community. We talk about various people that worked with the CAB to make sure that it worked well. We actually had somebody from the board of directors who served as a liaison to the community advisory board and vice versa. And I actually was, I got money from my union to be able to go on these board retreats that the board of directors went on, because I was just an ex officio member of the regular board of directors because I was the chair of the CAB. But I wanted to build relationships with these people so that we really felt like there was some rapport there and we could get more things accomplished. So this is, we talk about programming, and we use I think it was 1 to 5 as an assessment of how the station was doing in those areas. And I had various people fill out a report every month about how they were doing these categories by grading them 1 to 5, 1 being almost not worth it and 5 being exemplary. So most of this was done by me, actually. So as you can see, the website, we talked about they had a TV show then, their news was called Life and Times, and they had talking heads like Pat Morrison, if anybody's ever heard that name, and Hugh Hewitt. That's a conservative person. And so we looked at ways that, for instance, I say here, talking heads versus real people. CAMEX was, they did a thing about voting, and then CAMEX, which is a Latino station, and we compared things and on how they were getting the message out. So that's my assessment of the website. And then I also compared it to other PBS station websites on how they're, like I said, more photos, member benefits. These are recommendations that I had made based on what I saw on the website. And I was involved with Thai Cultural Day for many years. And so I got some kids to go with me as volunteers to cover Thai Culture Day and get some information out about the station. Did that also at an amusement park. I suggested a different one than they use because Knott's Berry Farm is more educationally oriented. And then let's see what else is there to show you here. So what I found interesting was I found that KPFT and KPFA are the only two stations that I could find the community needs assessment for. And so let me show you that. Let's see if I can pull that up. Where is, oh, there it is. Where did it go now? I'm not real familiar with this tool in case you haven't noticed. Put that down there. Oh, here we go. This is one that KPFA did back in 2018. They're about to do another one at KPFT, and they've asked me to help them pull that off. What they do is they set up a town hall. They bring all these people in and talk about what the station is doing, listeners and folks like that, and then have them rate it right then and there. And they put it all into this nice document that it's actually more extensive than the one that we had done. We were just sort of working in the dark because we didn't know anybody did this sort of thing. And as far as I know, back in 1999, when we did ours, we didn't know that any other station was doing that. So I was really impressed with this one that I found from KPFA, and also one from KPFT is very well done. It's, I think in a lot of ways it surpasses what we were able to do at KCET. So I'm asking the station, since I'm back on the cab at KCET, and they've now merged with another PBS station, I've asked them to consider doing this again. And this one I'm really impressed with. So it's, rather than rebuilding what we did, it seems that KPFA and KPFT are spot on with what you need on this community assessment. So all I can do is offer some support in that area, and that's what I intend on doing.
Dan, my screen is blank. Are you intending to show us something, or is it something
I thought I was.
on my end?
Let me see what I did wrong here. Oh, hang on a second. It's paused. Oh, resume. There we go.
Yeah, we're not seeing it right now. We're only seeing
I'm clicking on resume share, and
all right, hold tight.
okay.
All right. Theoretically, you should be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm hitting. Let me tell you what, I'll stop share and then I'll do it again. And let's see. This is, there we go. This is the one that KPFA had done that I found on their website. I've been looking at all the websites. I've been talking to all the different CAB chairs to sort of figure out best practices and also to set up a network so that we can all talk to each other about things that we're doing in the community and exchanging ideas, because that's how we all get better, right? So it's not scrolling now, but anyway, there's a lot of information here. You can, one of the weird things that I found was that KPFT and the station itself and the cab were not linking each other. Their websites were totally separate and they're running things in parallel, but they weren't talking to each other. And I found out that's because they're redesigning the whole website and all, and that's why they're not interconnected right now. So that had me worried for a minute, because I know there's got to be some independence, but there's also got to be some things that you share so that people realize that when they're looking at the stuff on the cab, that it really is pertinent to what the station is trying to accomplish. So, like I said, I can send this out, or you can check out the website. And I've sent the one from KCT out to various folks, and I was proud of that until I saw what you guys had managed to accomplish at KPFA and KPFT. So all I can do is try to help them with redoing them, because it's time. It's been, I mean, the one that I saw at KPFT was from 2019. So it's definitely time to catch up with the listeners and see where you're doing well and where you're failing to meet the needs of the community. Any questions?
Yeah, go on, Ken. You got your hand up, Kenny?
Yes, Dan, very good presentation. My question is, I see this historically in Pacifica. We have less than 1% of the audience. So every time we're doing these community needs assessments, it's to our membership. Right. Is there any way to go to the vast membership of people who are not listening, like some kind of a survey to the nonprofit or public radio station public, something broader than current listeners or members of the Pacifica stations, and go out and farm for some fresh fish outside of the typical fishing areas we're in?
Well, what I wanted to do when I was CAB chair was I wanted to also, and I tried to do this earlier this year because Democracy Now! Is broadcast on KPFK, and it's also broadcast on KCT. So I was thinking there's the natural affinity there for at least that particular program, where you could work together to do things like that. And one of the things that I was thinking we could do is do PSAs or something so that we on KCT to say we need your help in helping our sister station KPFK find out where they need more work on their assessment, things like that. I think if you reaching across the aisle, that you can actually help each other out.
All right, and I should note that I put up the instruction guide for the the station activity survey stuff. That's up there. And then Sue Cohn writes, is McCrory's email public? May I have it? She puts her email in there. Also, the rest of this committee. And then Raymer, thanks for the VUD file, the essay. Okay. Thank you for, thanks, Bruce. Someone's thanking you for filming the thing you did last time. And the streaming thing isn't working because I guess Otis is in Dallas right now. Anyway, other comments or questions on this stuff? Do you, by the way, have copies of the KCET and KPFA? You have them here of the community needs assessments. Could you put them up on the chat so people could download them?
I'm not sure how to do that, but
Okay, no sweat. Um,
Can you
anybody
tell
have
us
any?
what date they're from? Are they
um,
current?
this one is from 2019, and mine's even older. It's from well, actually 2000.
Thanks.
And I don't know if KCT ended up doing more of the reports, or if I just created it and then it died after I left. I have no idea.
Right. Julie, go on.
Yeah, I mean, Dan might not know the answer to this question, but I noticed that at least on the KPFA survey, they use SurveyMonkey to get to people. And so what I was wondering is, can the other stations get a copy of the survey that they use just as a kind of template for, so they don't have to start from scratch? Because I think one of our biggest problems is we're so bare bones and skeletal in terms of staffs that all the things we need to do to be fully in compliance, or taking people's eyes away from things, our staff taking their eyes away from things like actually keeping the radio station on the air. So we've got to make it so that we can get volunteers who can help us, accomplish these things so that we can, work our way back into CPP's good graces. And I don't know if you know the answer to that question, Dan.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question either. I think that if we can show that we're making a real honest to God effort to get back into compliance, that they're going to welcome us with open arms. Maybe I'm being naive about that, but I really think they want us to look good too, because it certainly makes them look good.
Well, one thing I want to suggest that we talked about doing in New York, and I blame myself for not doing this, is years ago, Bertold and I came up with the necessity to basically put in every premium that goes out questionnaires.
Excellent.
Now, it's not scientific. It's not like a scientific survey, like with, controls and all that, because people are going to self choose what they send. But I think it'd be very useful to have changing up all the time surveys asking all sorts of different questions going out in the premiums that we send out, and have people fill them out and write them to their heart's content what they want and get data. But anyway, why don't I start? Does anybody else want to make any comments before I start calling on people to comment? Raymer, you have your mic open. Do you want to ask a comment or question? Okay, you don't want to do that. What about you, Darlene? Darlene Pagano, are you there?
I'm following along as best I can, writing a mile a minute. So, but it doesn't leave me with even knowing how to ask more questions than I'm getting answered right now. So thanks for calling on me, but no.
Okay. What about you, Eric? Eric Jacobson?
Thanks for asking, Jim. I'm somewhat just in the same position. I'm trying to learn a little bit of this for the first time. So I'm not really in a position to ask intelligent questions. So I'll also pass for now.
Well, don't worry. Unintelligent questions are good too. Don't worry
No
about it.
stupid questions, right?
Yeah, no. It's we're all learning. All of us learning. Bruce, do you have any other comments or questions right now? Oh, Julie, I see your hand up. Let me go to Julie. Go on, Julie.
Yeah, I asked Dan the question about the SurveyMonkey survey from KPFA, but I realize Darlene's from KPFA, and I don't expect you to know the answer off the top of your head, Darlene, but I wonder if you could find out who at KPFA put together their SurveyMonkey survey, and what's the prospects for sharing it with all the other units. Thanks.
Do you know the answer to that, Darlene?
No, but I'm pretty sure I know who to ask, so I will.
Okay, I'm pretty sure Carol Wolfley was responsible for that, because I would work with her when she was in charge of the cab. Bruce, you have your hand up. Go on. You got any comments, Dan?
I couldn't actually hear him.
All right. Darlene, you opened your mic. You wanted to comment on something?
Beg pardon, I'll shut it down.
All right. Yeah, one of the things I should suggest is when we essentially turned the guns of the Community Advisory Board in New York to essentially deal with premium problems, and that's something I'd recommend to every LSB to basically help the premiums folks deal with unresolved issues. It essentially, I use that opportunity to turn it into ongoing focus group system. So I would ask people, get on the phone and say, like, what do you think? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And just listen to them and let them tell us what they thought was going on. And, not put any constrictions on it, not try to shape how they were talking, just hear what they had to say. Because the more input, the better. Of course, you have to keep in mind that when you get people who are self-selecting to volunteer, they tend to be in the category of hardcore listeners, which usually is about, at this point in New York, is about 40% of the audience, which means they listen to BAI most of the time. And so you always have to keep that in consideration. It sort of gets to the question of, how do you survey people who are outside our listener group to come in and say, well, what would they like us to do that we're not doing? Go on, Dan.
One of the things that we have started doing at KCT is if we're doing have a booth at a public event, to have those kind of sheets right there for people to fill out.